The beauty that you see within another individual is a direct reflection of the beauty within you. The strength that you see in another individual is a direct reflection of the strength within you. The wisdom that you see in another individual is a direct reflection of the wisdom within you. Now, let me tell you this. What if the reason you don't feel understood by people in your life, by the people around you, is because they aren't able to reflect the depth of where you're coming from? You're sort of, where you are is a certain level of depth, a certain level of wisdom, a certain level of strength, a certain level of enthusiasm, or whatever it is, and the reason you don't feel understood is because the people in your life aren't able to reflect that capacity of depth, wisdom, enthusiasm, whatever it is. Whatever the area is that you don't feel understood in, it may directly be because the people in your life aren't able to reflect that capacity of the thing that you don't feel understood with. Now, the area that this is most commonly occurred with for me is spirituality. You know, at a young age, I was getting into spirituality, meditation and mysticism and psychology and meditation and inner child stuff and, you know, God and magic and the beauty of reality and all this profound stuff. And when I would talk to my friends and my family and, you know, people around me, my coworkers, about this stuff, I was coming from such a place of enthusiasm, such a place of passion, such a place of sincerity, and it was met with a sort of gray mundanity. It was met with what felt like a lack of reciprocation, a lack of understanding on their part. And it created this feeling of sort of alienation of, oh, they don't understand me, they don't know where I'm coming from. And out of that feeling of not being understood can also be born feelings of insecurity, like maybe I'm being too dramatic, maybe I'm being too much, maybe I'm weird. Maybe the reason they don't understand me is because I'm being too much, I'm being a little too eccentric, you know? But see, what I've began to realize over the past few years is that, first of all, not everybody's going to understand you, and that shouldn't put a damper on what you're expressing and the place of passion that you're expressing from. But also, the main reason that people generally don't understand you is because they don't have the capacity to understand you. The place that you're coming from is a place deeper than or drastically different than what they're able to reflect back to you. Now, look, like I was saying in the beginning, how the wisdom that you see in another individual is a direct reflection of the wisdom within you. This can get really confusing really quick, this whole reflection stuff and who's reflecting what and is it mine or is it yours? Well, just think about this. Let me try to simplify it for a moment. If you see somebody and you say, wow, they're very wise, how do you know they're wise? The only way you could know they're wise is if there's something within you that is aware of what wisdom is. So they say something and you say, oh my God, they're so wise. The reason you're able to recognize that is because they're reflecting back to you what you intuitively know wisdom to be. And that's the very same thing with beauty. You know, you fall in love with somebody and you say, oh my God, you are so beautiful. I love you so deeply. Words could never convey how much I love you. There's this illusion, in the same way it seems like that person is wise, they very well are, but there's this illusion that it's like coming from them. But your recognition of them being a wise person and your recognition of how much you love this individual is a direct reflection of your capacity to feel and know those things. The depth of love that you can feel is profound. It's seemingly limitless. It's infinite. It's bottomless. It's an ocean that you can offer to this being. And it gives this impression, when you deeply fall for somebody, it gives this impression that it's sort of coming from them. But what we tend to not recognize, what sort of goes unnoticed, is that we're sort of clothing them in our beauty. We're sort of decorating them and dressing them up in our own understanding of how beautiful we've made them out to be. We see it as they're sort of objectively beautiful, and they are the object of our love. but we don't recognize that the reason they are so beautiful and the reason we're so in love with them is because of the conditions within us that allow for such a state to be born. So the states that you're seeing in people, not only the positive things like wisdom and strength and courage, not only are those things reflections of what's already within you, but when you look out at the world and you say, oh my God, the world is such a horrible place, the world is acting as a reflection of an inner narrative you're telling yourself about it. We think that we're seeing things objectively. That's horrible, that's beautiful, that person's wise, that person's stupid. We think we're seeing from this objective place of an objective reference point. But we're not. We're seeing entirely subjectively. We're seeing from a point of awareness that's being spun through our story, our upbringing, our beliefs, our personality, the day we had. You know, somebody in one moment can be amazing and fun to be around, and then if they've had a bad day, they treat you in a completely different way. Or like, you're having a good day and you see something and you think it's awesome and fun, and then 2 hours later, you know, you've had a rough 2 hours or a rough day, and now you look at that thing as annoying and monotonous and just get out of my way, you know? Your perception is affected by where you're seeing from. What you see in the world is constantly fluid and liquid and changing. And it's a direct reflection of where you're coming from, the story you're telling yourself. You know? You see the world as horrible, that's telling you the story that you're telling yourself about the world. The world is not objectively horrible. The world is not objectively amazing. The world is not objectively anything. It just is. All this just is. And what we see it to be is revealing it's revealing a story we're telling ourselves. So when you judge somebody, it's revealing a set of judgmental conditions within you. This is why the way somebody treats you says more about them than it does about you. If somebody comes up to you and judges you and criticizes you and belittles you, all that does is reveal where their mind is at. And you can only really recognize that if you have the willpower and clarity to see that, rather than get sucked into their mind trap and believe their judgments and think, oh my God, they're right, maybe I'm too weird, maybe I'm not enough, maybe I'm not cool enough, maybe I'm not, you know? You believe their judgments. But when you're coming from a place of clarity and confidence in who you are and how you feel, when somebody judges you, when somebody hates on you, when somebody belittles you, or compliments you and tells you you're an amazing person, it shows where they're resonating. What somebody else's actions show what they're resonating on, the level on which they're resonating. So to think that you're seeing reality as it is, it's an illusion. You're seeing reality as you're telling it to be. You're seeing reality as you're making it out to be. So when you see somebody that's amazing, when you see somebody that's wise, as I described a moment ago, when you see somebody that's strong, when you see something that's annoying or horrible or frustrating, recognize that that's a reflection, that's reflecting back to you an inner narrative that you have. So that's the first thing here, is that the world is acting as a reflection of where you're coming from. But now let's talk about the situation where you're coming from is a deeper capacity that other people aren't able to live up to, that the people in your immediate life aren't able to meet. That is when you will feel misunderstood. That is when you will feel lonely. That is when you will feel isolated. Is when you're essentially deeper, more sensitive than the other people around you. When you're perceiving more, when you're deeper than the people around you. And also, I want to mention, deeper than and more sensitive, it doesn't mean better and worse. I'm not talking about better and worse. I'm talking about the ability and capacity to which you feel and to which you express and to which you think. When the people around you aren't able to reflect that back to you, there's this feeling of being misunderstood, you know? Carl Jung has a quote that says, the more a man knows, the more lonely he becomes. It's something to that effect. The more you know, the more aware you are, the more lonely you'll feel, because awareness is a sort of virtue. It's a very special virtue to have in this time that we live in, this sense of awareness, this sense of presence, this sense of wisdom. Terence McKenna has another quote that says, sanity in this time that we live in comes at a certain cost of alienation. Meaning, what it means to be sane, what it means to be coherent, what it means to be wise, comes at the cost of feeling sort of excluded from the group. Because a lot of the group, a lot of the people around you aren't resonating on that level. They haven't developed the capacity to perceive that level. If you've ever been like in a relationship and you loved this person to pieces and you were just pouring all this profound, deep love and you were so passionate, so intimate, so romantic, so loving, so kind, so present, everything, and it was just all love and roses, you know what I'm saying? And then they leave you. It leaves this remarkable scar on your heart that says, first of all, wondering, was I not good enough? You know, why wasn't that enough? I was so loving. I was there for them. I was, you know, the whole story, the whole shtick. I was everything for them. I was there. I was loving. I was everything they needed, and they still left. First of all, recognize that if you're pouring your heart from a place of sincerity and they leave, you guys aren't meant to be together. But moreover, it's the idea that where you're coming from isn't being seen by them. They don't understand how deep you are. They don't understand the value of what you're actually offering. If they did, they probably wouldn't have left because they see how deep, genuine, intimate, and passionate you are being. But see, because you're such a deep individual, when somebody doesn't reciprocate that or appreciate that or recognize that, it creates this feeling of, first of all, not being enough, of why don't they see how much I'm giving them, but also this feeling of your love being taken for granted, your value being taken for granted. But what I'm saying is that that's not necessarily what's going on. I mean, on one level it could be where somebody's sort of, you know, when you get with somebody that's just endlessly offering, there's this sense of like, people use each other. Somebody that doesn't have a deep sense of value and worth and love within themselves will sort of sap that from one of these deep, sensitized individuals that I'm speaking of, you know? But what we miss realizing, what we fail to realize when we offer endlessly this love to other people and they seem to take it for granted and not recognize it and not reciprocate it, is that these people that we're giving this love aren't able to reflect that depth of love. To put it simply, they're not as deep as you are. They're not as deep as you are. They're reflecting back to you the depth to which they know love within themselves. So take notice of the fact that the depth of love that you're offering says more about you than it does about them. And them leaving says more about them than it does about you. It's not that you're not good enough. It's not that they're a horrible person. It's that they're not able to reflect back to you in equality, in equal proportion, the depth of love that you're offering. And this results in a feeling of loneliness, of not being understood, you know? You can only offer somebody love to the extent that you know how to offer yourself that love. If you don't have a solid basis and understanding of what love is, how the hell are you going to express it in any amount of depth? The depth to which you offer love to others is directly proportionate to the depth to which you can offer love to yourself. This is why it's so often stressed the importance of developing first self-love. Because self-love is the ground upon which love for others is born. A relationship is only as deep as you are. If your partner is deeper and more sensitized to love and depth and emotion than you are, they're going to feel an imbalance of reciprocation, not because you're not good enough, but because you aren't able to reciprocate that capacity of love and depth and intimacy and sensitization to emotion. It's not that you're not good enough, it's that you literally haven't developed the depth to be able to reflect it and reciprocate it back to them. And that's what creates the feeling of being lonely, of not being understood. When you endlessly offer and share with such deep, passionate enthusiasm to people, and you're just met with blandness. You're met with as if you're being a nuisance by sharing your heart, by sharing your depth. It creates this feeling of like, why doesn't anybody understand me? Why doesn't anybody hear me? Doesn't anybody else see how beautiful life is? You know? It's that they're not able to touch in, to drop into that dimension of depth and beauty and love that you've tuned into. It doesn't mean you're better than them. It doesn't mean they're not as good as you. It doesn't mean you're doing something wrong or they're doing something wrong. It's about the depth to which we perceive and experience life. Now, think about the word understanding for a moment. This was a profound epiphany I had one time during an LSD experience where I realized that the word understanding directly reflects what it means. Understanding means to stand under. Understanding is the ability to stand under, aka to act as a foundation for the thing or person that you understand. When you understand something, it means that you're holding it up and are perceiving the whole of it. When you understand somebody, it means that you are the foundation upon which they are able to fully express in their authenticity and in their completion. Understanding means to hold in entirety. Now, think about this. How are you going to hold somebody in entirety if you're not able to reflect that capacity of what they're reflecting to you? How are you going to hold in entirety somebody who's deeper than you? You can't. Now, if you're deeper than somebody else and you're engaging and sharing and expressing to somebody who's not as deep as you, to put it simply, and remember, not as deep doesn't mean not as good. It means not as sensitized to reality. If you're engaging with somebody who's not as deep as you, they're not able to lift you up and hold you in the entirety that you express. So that results in a feeling of being at least marginally misunderstood, not seen, not heard, you know? And this feeling can get very lonely, this feeling of nobody else seeing the beauty, nobody else realizing how beautiful life is. And I've experienced this numerous times in my journey of life. My spiritual journey is the area that is most commonly reflected itself. You know, you ever have that moment where you're sitting there and you're listening to music and you're all by yourself and you sort of, it's like as the music plays, you're like seeing your life in this like music video kind of way of all your upbringing and your relationships and your letdowns and all the hard times and all the good times and how much you've grown and how far you've came, and it's all just this beautiful vision of beauty and power and potential and God, magic, so much beauty. And then you realize that that's you. Nobody else gets that but you. You are the only one in that moment that gets to hold, that gets to behold such power. That power is happening within you, bro. That magic, that love, that passion, that enthusiasm is you. And somebody else not understanding it or not being able to reflect it doesn't say anything about the validity of your experience of that love, of that passion. All it says is that they're not able to understand it. They're not able to reciprocate it back to you. And man, when you come across somebody that does reciprocate back to you the same depth and capacity to which you experience life and beauty and intimacy and emotions and all this kind of stuff, man, it's a trip. It's a trip. It's like looking into a mirror, you know? It's just this feeling of like, wow, here we are. Like, isn't life crazy? It's almost like words and language sort of fall away when you meet somebody who's where you're at, you know? There's no you don't need to introduce where you're at. You don't need to try to reveal how deep reality is to you or how deep of an individual you are. They are well aware of it because they're just as deep as you are. So you're meeting on a level of, You're meeting at the same level, you know what I'm saying? So, other people's lack of ability to understand you shouldn't infringe on your depth, you know? Have you ever, okay, so there's many times I've heard people say, you know, two people are talking and one person's talking really deep about something and really passionately and enthusiastically, whether they're happy or sad about something. And the other person says, it's not that deep, man. It's not that deep. I've heard that multiple times. You're looking too hard into it. You're thinking too hard into it. It's not that deep. Bruh. It is at least as deep as the one that is expressing it. If they're expressing from that place of depth, it's at least that deep. The person saying it's not that deep is actually saying, I'm not that deep. I can't handle the depth to which you're reflecting all this stuff. I can't reciprocate it. I can't understand it. I can't hold it in its entirety. So in the same way, we sort of think we're seeing objectively. We say, you're wise, you're beautiful, you're cool, you're dumb, you're smart, you know what I'm saying? When we see somebody that's reflecting from a space of depth, a capacity that we're not able to touch into, we say, you're too deep. But really what we're saying is they're reflecting back to us that we're not that deep. They're coming from a place that we're not able to tune into. They're coming from a depth that we're not able to touch into. This brings me back to the idea that when somebody judges you, criticizes you, belittles you, puts you down, it says everything about them and nothing about you. They're revealing where their mind is at. When you share beauty and somebody like makes fun of the way you look, notice how the beauty that you were just sharing just soared right over their head because they're so caught up and ensnared in their own judgments and criticism of the world. You know? A situation is at least as deep as the deepest individual in that situation. You know? Who are you to determine what is and isn't deep? That's too deep. For what? In reference to what? It's too deep relative to what? You? It's too deep for you? That's usually what it is. It's not like you're being too deep, you're thinking too hard in it. If you're able to feel that deeply, if you're able to analyze and reflect on something that deeply, it's, like I said, at least that deep. So when somebody shuts you down and says you're being too much, you're too emotional, you're being over dramatic, obviously, you know, touch back in on home base and see how you're being. But if you're coming from a place of authenticity, enthusiasm, passion, wisdom, motivation, inspiration, don't bat an eye at people that shut you down, that belittle you, because what that's doing is you're reflecting to them a place that they're not able to touch into. And so they can't understand it. And yes, you feel lonely. Yes, you feel misunderstood. But realize it's not because you're doing something wrong. It's not because you're too much. It's because these people around you aren't able to feel to the depth that you feel. Not being understood is sort of it says something about you. It says something about the depth of you. How deep you are. How deep your heart is. When you, yeah, like loving is the most remarkable example of this to me, where whether it's a romantic partner or a friend or a family member or a pet, that love, that passionate, deep, liquid, mind-melting love that you feel towards that thing is a reflection of how deep you are. It's a reflection of how deeply you can feel. That love is happening within you. They're not giving it to you. Your romantic partner is not giving you that feeling of love. Your romantic partner is acting as a key that allows you to give yourself permission to let loose the love that was always within you. And see, that brings into consideration how we set up conditions for us to feel or not feel how deep we are. Where I'm not going to feel the beauty of my heart and the sense of well-being and happiness until I have a partner. You know what I'm saying? That love, that depth is always within you. It's oftentimes lying dormant, waiting for the key to show up, to unlock the condition that we've built, where once this person shows up, then I'll open the floodgates of my heart. Once this happens, then I'll be happy. You know? It's always within you. It's always a reflection of you, of your depth, of your passion, of your enthusiasm. You know? I can't stress it enough. Like, remember like being a kid and you come home with this painting or this sculpture you made in class and you're like, Mom, look at this, isn't this so cool? And they're like, yeah, honey, that's cool. And then they just go back to what they're doing. And there's this feeling of like, they don't see it. They didn't, like, oh, like it's not that cool because mom didn't give me the time of day, or because dad didn't give me the time of day to reciprocate in equal proportion the enthusiasm, the passion, the interest. So now I feel like, oh, like I'm being too much. You know, in certain upbringings, they may have even told you you're too much. But bruh, that's the same thing as it being said, you're too deep. No, you're not too deep. You're not too much. They're not enough. They're not that deep. They're not matching the depth that you're coming from. You know, and I can't stress enough how much that can result in a feeling of being lonely, of being isolated, of not being understood. You know? But I do want to emphasize that, you know, there's this statement, your vibe attracts your tribe. So the longer that you know, if somebody tells you you're too much and you compensate for that, you water yourself down, okay, I'm going to bring it down a notch because I'm too much. You've just dampened your vibe. You've just dampened your energy. So now that's one step back. That's one step away from attracting the people who will actually reciprocate in equal proportion your depth. When you water yourself down, when you take it down a notch to keep the peace with all the people who aren't as deep as you, you're robbing this world of your depth. And when you quiet yourself, when you silence yourself, when you belittle yourself, your tribe isn't able to find you, but because your tribe finds you directly as they find you by sensing your vibe. That's why your vibe attracts your tribe. And how are you going to attract your tribe if you aren't resonating on your vibe? So stop dimming your light. Stop silencing yourself. You know, and this comes at the cost of feeling misunderstood, feeling like you're too much, which isn't true at all. Feeling not seen, feeling not heard, feeling lonely, feeling isolated. Like Terence McKenna said, sanity in this time that we live in comes at a certain cost of alienation. Do you want to be unhappy and included, or happy and acting as an example of all the people that don't understand you? It comes at a cost. Authenticity comes at a cost, and what that cost most often is feeling misunderstood, feeling lonely. Because like I said, awareness, wisdom is a virtue in this time that we live in, where you come at somebody with enthusiasm and passion and they say you're too much. They say you're too deep. You ever talk, that has happened to me time and time again, where I'm talking about life, I'm talking about psychology, I'm talking about happiness, I'm talking about death, pain, problems, trauma, all this stuff that to me is like a basis of how you become a whole, holistic being, a aligned being, and then they say, oh my God, that's too deep, stop talking about that. And I'm just like, so what the hell do you want me to talk about now? Can we stop talking about this? This is too deep. I don't know how to function in that moment. Oh wow, yeah, the weather's crazy. Yeah, right. What's the Patriots gonna be doing this year, you know? Let's talk about sports or something. Wow, look at that cloud. What do you want me to do? When you tell me that's too deep, stop talking about that. I don't understand that. I don't understand that. And that's happened so many times in my life, where my depth is met with either a lack of understanding or literally being told I'm too much. Take it down a notch, you're a little too much. What that's saying is I can't reciprocate the depth of you. I don't have the capacity to reflect your passion, your enthusiasm. So take it down a notch so I feel more secure in my dullness. So if you feel lonely, if you feel misunderstood, if you feel alienated, maybe consider that it might be because the people around you aren't as deep as you are, aren't as sensitized to the depth of emotion and vision and feeling and thought and experience of life that you are. Maybe consider that people around you aren't tuned in to the depth and the sensitization to life that you are. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope this video helped. And if it did, consider subscribing and leaving a like on this video because it really helps me out and it helps get this video recommended to more people like you. You may not have heard, but a while ago I published a book, Trippy Love, a collection of talks on psychedelics, spirituality, and the mystery of existence. Now this is an over 800-page book that includes over 54 hours of direct transcriptions from videos of my YouTube channel. This book includes over 90% of all videos I've ever shared on this YouTube channel in a compact and easy to read format. Now you may be wondering, why did I have the inspiration to turn my YouTube channel into a book? The first reason being, if my YouTube channel ever got deleted, I got this book right here which holds so much sentimental value to me, but also what I understand that people digest information in a myriad of different ways. Some people are visual learners, other people like to listen, and other people like to read. And I understand that like what I've shared on this YouTube channel is, to me, very valuable information. It means a lot to me. It holds deep value in my heart. And making this book, I'm making that information available to a different group and percentage of people. So this book, it's easy to read. It's very flowy, it's very stream of consciousness style. If you watch my videos, you can expect that style in this book. And not only are you getting over 54 hours of direct transcriptions of videos from my YouTube, but also in the very beginning, you get over 35 pages of detailed autobiography of where I came from. My life as a childhood and my early life growing up and how each chapter kind of led to the next and, you know, the foreshadowings and seeds of my spiritual awakening and all this stuff. And I can tell you right now that introduction section is literally my favorite part of this book right here. I poured my heart and soul into that, and if you've ever been interested in who I am and where I came from and the sort of roots of Northwood shaman, if you will absolutely love that autobiography section. So not only do you get the autobiography and the 800 pages of transcripts, but also in the end I included a short reflections and poetry section as well. The short reflections is like, over the years, anytime I was like curious about something or wondering about something or reflecting on something, I jotted it down and I wrote down this little, basically just me thinking out loud. And I decided that to include that in the book because I thought it would be just interesting to have that in there. And also I have a poetry section as well, where over the years, any and all quotes, one-liners, phrases, poems that I wrote when I was in emotional, philosophical, existential states, I included in a compilation in this book that you can find at the very end. So you're getting a whole lot by buying this book. It goes for $25 on Amazon.com, and I can tell you it's worth it. If you appreciate this YouTube channel, you will highly appreciate this book, Trippy Love. So if you want to help your homie out, and you're interested in getting yourself a copy, I will link the book in the description of this video. And you can also find the link in the bio section of my YouTube channel. So yeah, if you want to help me out, if you're interested in getting yourself a copy, definitely go and buy yourself a copy right now, and it would mean the world to me. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all later.